In this video, I'm going to talk about the different types of 12-volt switches that are available and the kinds that we use and why we use them. So there's two main types of switches that people typically will use in van builds. One is this, which is a toggle switch, and there's different designs. There's round ones, there's more oval, there's all black, there's ones that are lit up, and they work fine, but I just don't think they're very good looking. That's the one that's the most commonly used. But then there's this type, which is more of just a very clean, just push button or touch switch. And then there's this type, which is more of just a household, like dimmer. You can see this slides up and down. But this is for 12 volt, which would be different than what would be in a home, which would be 120 volt. So I don't really love these just because they're not the best looking. Also, I don't like the ones that have the connections where you use a spade connector to slide them on, because what happens is there's a little hole in these, which is probably kind of hard to see, but each one has a little hole, and the spade connector has a little pin that goes into that and kind of hooks and holds it in. But two problems with that. One is if you want to take it out, you got to get something sharp in there and kind of push it out while keeping pressure, and it almost takes 3 hands to get these things off. But then once you pull them on and off a couple of times, they can weaken and loosen and fall off. Some of them don't even have that little hole with the pin that holds them in. And those, you hate to have something in a wall, enclosed wires, and then have one of those spade connectors come loose and fall off, which I've seen happen. So I'm not a big fan of the ones with the spade connectors. What I like are the ones that have the wires right integrated into it that are connected to the switch, and then you just connect your wires up this way. And I feel like that's a much more secure way to attach these. In a minute, I'm going to take you up into the van and show you exactly how we attach all of these, the connectors that we use that we think are absolutely the best for van building. Now this switch is my favorite, and the reason is you can see these are two separate pieces. So we have all the wiring integrated into a plug, so we can put this switch into the wall or panel or whatever it is that we're using. Has this little nut to tighten it in the back. We can just plug this in, and if we need to remove something, we can just unplug it. So this is my absolute favorite one to use. There's a few different types of these switches. This one is what's called the latching switch. So basically it's just on and off. When you push it, the button stays in. This ring will light up when it's pushed in, letting you know that the switch is turned on. And then to turn it off, you just push it again, the light turns off, and the button comes out. And so this one we use for a lot of things like water pumps, our ball valves, maybe battery heaters, light switches where you just want to turn it on and off. And so we use these quite a bit, and there's different sizes, different colors. You can get the lights in different colors. Then you got this one is just a little bit different. This is a stepless dimmer. So with this one, all you do is touch it. There's not a button to push, you just touch it, and then you can hold your finger on it and it will dim the lights up and down. So the problem with these stepless dimmers is the light, the ring light is always on. I have not been able to find any where the light will turn off when the switch is off and turn on when it's on. The light's always on. If you're aware of one that has a light that comes on and off, then drop it in the description because I would love to know, but I have not been able to find one. Okay, so the light is always on. So sometimes that can be a problem for people, a little light glowing. We usually will use these in an area where it's not shining into the bunk area where you're gonna see it at night. We'll use this one a lot for the upper cabinets for a LED light strip that goes underneath the cabinets and shines down onto the galley. And we'll put this on the front of the upper cabinets facing towards the cab, and so it's really not someplace that you're going to notice it. So that's the one we use there, is the stepless dimmer. They also make a couple others. They have what's called a momentary on and off, where you can just hold it. The area we'll use that sometimes, we'll put a slot, we call it a sight tube, on the back of the mechanical box for the plumbing so you can see the tank, and then we'll put a LED light inside, and with the momentary switch, you can just hold it in to see the light and then let go and the light turns off. So that can be a useful one in certain situations. Now the last one is this one. And I like this, A, because it looks like a household switch. You'd put a plate on it, would look just like that. But it's a dimmer that dims on and off, but it doesn't have any lights. So it's not going to be annoying that you see this light on. You could use this one. This would do the same thing. You could turn it on by touching and hold it to dim things on and off, but that light's always going to be on. And this light would typically be where you could see it from the bed. And so we like to use this one in those types of situations, just for the look and also because there's no light that's going to be shining on you. Now, if you're interested in any of the switches, we created a Google Doc that with all of the materials that we use for our van building. We're constantly updating it, so it's a living, breathing document that you can access. There's a link in the description below, and you can use that document to get access to all the materials that we use in our van builds. We've spent the last 5 years researching and testing products, and these are the products that we know that we can trust and that we use in our own builds, and so you can trust them as well. So let's go up into a van and I'll kind of show you how we use all of these different switches. So you can see we're on the passenger side of the van. This van has a galley on the passenger side extending out into the slider. And right here, we're gonna have all of our controls, our switches, things like that. And so this is gonna have a subway tile on it with a design going down the middle. And we're gonna be doing a van tour of this van as soon as we're finished with it in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. But right now, things are a little bit messy. I've just got things hooked up so that I could test everything. So here's what we do, is we run using like a 12 gauge wire from our DC fuse block, 1 or 2 wires up to this area, and that provides the power, and we just call that our console power. And then we'll connect maybe 2 or 3 different things to that one power line. Okay, and it makes things really simple so you don't have to run as many wires. Depending on the amperage of your different components, you may need to run independent ones just for one thing, but for a lot of things you can combine them. For example, we'll run one power line that we'll use for both our puck lights on the ceiling and also our toe kick lights, which we have down underneath the galley. Then we'll run another line that we'll use for our pump, our water pump, and also our gray tank dump switches. Instead of running 4 different wires, we're running 2. So we run those lines up here, and then the way that we connect everything is using lever nuts. We absolutely love these lever nuts, okay? We've been using them for a couple of years now, and they are by far the easiest and I believe the best way to connect all of your wiring inside of the van. Now, when you're connecting wires exterior, these are not waterproof, so it's best to use another type of connection that's waterproof. But inside of the van, we use these pretty much for everything where we're using a 12 gauge wire or smaller. They do also make these that are a little bit bigger that will accept, I think, a 8 or 10 gauge wire, but we pretty much use these that are made for the 12 gauge or smaller. And it's awesome because you can use a 12 gauge wire and a 22 gauge wire right next to each other, and it's going to hold either one of those equally as well. It has you just basically slip the wire in, flip down this little lever, a metal piece comes in, clamps it, makes the connection, and holds it secure. And we have links to all of this in our Google Docs, so you can check that out. Now, they make these lever nuts in different configurations. They have a 2 lever, they do a 3 lever, and then they do a 5 lever. Okay, and we use all of these in different areas. Let's say you put 2 wires into this and push the levers down, it's going to connect those 2 wires. So you're always putting like the positive coming from your batteries and then the positive going to your device into the same one. Okay, so if you have positive, you'd need one of these for the positive, and then you'd need one of the negative. You would never be putting a positive and a negative into the same one because that would short them out. That would be like touching a positive and negative together. Okay, so if we're just connecting one thing, with two wires, a black and a red, a black and a red, we would use two of these 2-lever wagos. So if we're doing 3, like for example, let's say in your ceiling lights, we haven't put them in yet here, but I'd use a 3-lever lever nut, and I would put the power coming into the light into one, I'd connect the power coming out of the light into another, and then the power going to the next light I do to a third one. So that's where we use the 3, is where we're running things like lights, stringing them along, then you can use the 3. And the place that we use the 5, these are really convenient, because if I'm bringing, let's say like I talked earlier, power from the DC fuse block, and I put the power into here, and then I want to run 2 or 3 different things, like I could plug my power for my ceiling lights into one, the power for my underneath the cabinet LED strip into one, and I could plug my toe kick lighting into another. I use these a lot for the negatives, where I have to connect multiple negatives together. This acts kind of as a bus bar. So I might have 3 or 4 or 5 different devices, and I put all the negatives into here, lock them down, then I don't have to run separate negative lines for each device. So here is that switch for the ceiling lights, and this is a 170, and so we've divided the lights into the front and the rear of the living area. So this one has 2, and I've connected those, you see, with the 2-lever nuts for the power coming in. Is up on here on the top, the power coming from the DC fuse block. I've connected that with 2-lever wire nuts, and then I've connected the front with one and the rears to this. And so all of these are with lever nuts. So this is just for testing. But the nice thing is, when I go to install this, all I got to do is disconnect all the lever nuts, put this switch in, and then reconnect all of them, and I'm good to go. You can use these wire nuts with both AC and DC. So when we're doing a switch, like for example, this is the switch for the water heater, we've connected all of our neutrals together with a 3-lever wire nut. And then you can see here, we've connected all of our grounds together with a 5-lever wire nut. Now, we're not using all of them, there's only 4 of them, but it's nice to be able to use a 5 instead of having to do a 2 and a 3, because all of that's gonna fit easier into the electrical box. Now, another thing that I really like about these wire nuts is that you can test things really easily by taking your multimeter and just taking the probes and putting them right into the lever nut. For example, right here is the power coming into my switch. I can just take that, I can put the negative into this one, lock it in, the positive into this one, lock it in, and you can see it showing 13.27 volts. So really nice way, rather than trying to hold these probes onto the end of the wires and make contact, you just lock them in and you can test it really easily. Again, this is a little bit messy because I'm just testing everything, but you can see here I've connected our switches for our pump and our dump. So the lights are off, and then if I turn them on, you can see the light comes on, and then when I press it, the light turns off. Now again, this is nice because when I get ready to connect these, all I've got to do is just push the button, unplug that, I can put this into the wall, attach it, and then just from the back, plug this in. And then you can see this wire coming out right here. This is going to be for our LED strip that goes underneath this upper cabinet. And that's where, like I was saying, you would use this stepless dimmer. And I'll just, when I'm ready to do that, we'll have an end panel here. We will have we'll put a hole in it, we'll put this in, and then we'll just connect the wires using these wire nuts. So hopefully this video helped you with determining which switches you're gonna need for your van build, and also the best way to connect them. Like I say, can't say enough about these lever nuts. They're a game changer. We used to use solder connections or crimp connections. Then if you want to disconnect them, then you've got to cut them and redo it. These you just pop on and off. They're rock solid. They've been tested. The pull test, vibration test. They're approved for marine applications, which tells me that they're good enough. If they're good enough for marine, they're good enough for a van build. So if you want to see more videos about van building, DIY tips and tricks, van products, tools, then be sure to tap or click the screen. And if you want to see the van tour video of this van in a couple of weeks, as well as all of our other upcoming videos, then please consider subscribing and be sure to smash that like button. And we'll see you in the next video. Jeff with Thrive Vans, thrive on. See ya.